They came in silence, slipping between the stars like the gods of conquest they believed themselves to be. The Vroxian Empire, undefeated across 100 systems, approached Earth with the calm certainty of a predator stalking slow prey. Their ships, black monoliths of ion and alloy, moved in flawless formation. They didn't cloak their presence. They never had to. The weak didn't need surprise. The fleet's command vessel, Hegemon's Reach, hovered at the edge of Earth's gravity well, observing the blue-green orb below. Primitive, they said. Unarmored. Its signals were scattered, analog in places, disorganized. No sign of planetary shields. No orbital defenses of note. It was a gift, a soft world on the edge of galactic relevance. They assumed humanity didn't even realize what was descending upon them. Then the signal arrived. Simple. Unencrypted. Human standard bandwidth, audio only. It began with static, then a voice, calm, unhurried, and without desperation. You are entering sovereign space. This is your only warning. Turn back. You are not prepared for what comes next. No posturing. No screaming. No pleas for peace. Just that voice. Clean and final. On the command deck, Admiral Vran chuckled. They know, he said, his mandibles clicking in amusement. They think it matters. The bridge crew laughed with him. The Vroxian Empire had extinguished resistance on worlds far more advanced than this. Human courage, if that's what this was, didn't register. To them, the message was fear posturing as resolve. But something about the delivery bothered Sub-Warlord Track. He reviewed the signal again, watching audio patterns, modulation anomalies. Nothing seemed hidden, and yet, something about it didn't match expectations. No scrambling. No panic. He brought it to the Admiral. Vran didn't even glance up. A dying animal growls before it falls. Back on Earth, there were no global alerts broadcast into the stars. No dramatic speeches. No last-ditch cries for help. Humans simply went quiet. Sensors reported civilian traffic shutting down. Power grids adjusting in unfamiliar patterns. Unusual energy spikes beneath polar regions. Yet there was no visible mobilization of a planetary defense fleet. No massing of aircraft or drones in orbit. No fleet. No warning systems activated. Confident, the fleet deployed forward scouts toward lunar orbit, expecting no resistance. What they found was nothing. Not emptiness, just silence. Space around Earth seemed oddly dense, like there was something unseen pressing against them. Instruments recorded anomalous gravitational fluctuations, then stabilized. When the first scout ship failed to return data, it was presumed a malfunction. Then the second vanished. By the third, command grew curious. Not alarmed, curious. Track insisted on a retrieval probe. It found the wreckage of one of their own, atomized with surgical precision. No heat signature. No radiation trail. A clean kill, impossibly clean. It's debris from their ancient orbital junk, one engineer offered. They've littered their sky with metal for centuries. That theory evaporated when one of their mid-range cruisers simply ceased transmitting. One moment fully operational, then dark. No explosion, no distress call. Later scans showed nothing where the ship should be, like space had swallowed it whole. On the fourth day, the Vroxian fleet moved into Earth orbit. Still no response from the surface. Vran ordered a low-yield planetary demonstration strike. A show of power. Non-nuclear. Just enough to flatten a city and provoke submission. As targeting locked onto a coastal metropolis, every ship across the fleet received the same signal, again unencrypted. We warned you. Then static. Simultaneously, half the fleet's propulsion systems crashed. Power grids went haywire. Weapon systems locked up. Entire command decks flickered dark for 3.7 seconds. In those seconds, Earth watched and waited. Vran, now visibly disturbed, ordered diagnostics. Track offered a quiet theory. They weren't dealing with a primitive species at all. They were dealing with one that had grown in the shadows of greater powers, watching, learning, and adapting, not by matching strength but by preparing something worse: irrelevance. Their systems, their tactics, their weapons, all built to ignore the conventional rules of war. Track's words went ignored. The 5th day passed. A Vroxian dreadnought exploded from within, no external strike. It was as if the ship had simply decided to die. Its core melted inward, venting plasma through every corridor. 36,000 Vroxian lives lost. No cause identified. Human involvement presumed. Proof? None. And still, the humans remained silent. Then, another signal. You have one chance. Leave. No anger. No threat. Just certainty. The fleet remained. Pride demanded it. That was their second mistake. The first was ever arriving at Earth at all. The order was given without hesitation. Vroxian firepower descended through Earth's atmosphere, targeting communication hubs, defense installations, and population centers. Beams of coherent energy lanced through clouds, and kinetic rods struck with the fury of a small moon's gravity. Entire districts were flattened in seconds. Fires spread. Civilian infrastructure collapsed. Satellite networks fragmented. The invaders expected chaos. They expected the screaming. There was none. No broadcast of surrender. No military retaliation. Not even a formal declaration of war. Earth simply endured. Then something unusual happened. A Vroxian skirmisher patrol disappeared over the South Pacific. No distress signal. No wreckage. Just absence. Initial assumptions leaned toward an atmospheric malfunction or sensor failure, until another patrol vanished, this time over northern Canada. Their transponder stopped mid-flight. No data. No final transmission. Just silence. Scouts were sent. They didn't return either. The fleet adjusted orbit, deploying observation drones across multiple continents. Within hours, nearly half of those drones went offline. Still, not a single human fighter jet, tank, or marine had been sighted. And yet, something was dismantling the most advanced reconnaissance network the Vroxians had ever used. A low-level alert status was triggered. Not for immediate threat, just caution. Engineers theorized that perhaps the planet's magnetic field was interfering. The thought that Earth's defenders might be systematically targeting them wasn't taken seriously. Not yet. Then came the shutdown. A synchronized EMP pulse surged through low orbit. It didn't originate from a ship or visible launch point. Instead, it cascaded upward from the planet's poles and equator at once, moving through layers of atmosphere with calculated precision. Vroxian shields held barely, but their internal systems stuttered. Communications jammed. Targeting software reset. Dozens of secondary vessels began spinning off course as guidance systems recalibrated. Before adjustments could be made, explosions struck from within. 3 orbital transports suffered hull breaches in non-critical areas, but what stood out was how local and precise the strikes were. They didn't aim to destroy. They aimed to disable. And they succeeded. Internal cameras showed nothing, just sealed corridors, then ruptures, then vacuum. Within minutes, human audio hijacked Vroxian internal comms. You were warned. Nothing else. No demands. No negotiation. Vroxian protocol dictated retaliation. They launched counterstrikes against heat signatures and atmospheric anomalies, flattening large zones of jungle, desert, and forest. The scans confirmed nothing of military value had been hit. Still no answer from Earth. Then came the second wave, not from orbit, but from below. High-altitude drones of alien design began crashing across the planet's surface. Vroxian. Shot down. No radar signature of the assailants. No energy trails. The only common factor was proximity to urban centers that had already been struck days prior. Somehow, those cities had become nests of electronic disruption, bending signal and scattering data like smoke. The losses began to accumulate. One destroyer vanished completely from formation. A frigate suffered a sudden internal pressure collapse. Still, there were no visible threats in the sky, on the surface, or beneath it. Earth was bleeding them invisibly. Morale faltered. At fleet command, the mood shifted. No longer amused, the admirals demanded explanations. Track quietly submitted a theory. Humanity was waging a psychological and technological war, not a traditional one. They were not confronting the fleet, they were dissecting it. Vran scoffed. They are primitives with toys. Track responded without ceremony. Primitives don't erase ships. Meanwhile, the broadcast systems inside the Vroxian vessels began to activate on their own. Footage played, grainy human war archives. Not propaganda, but footage of real events. Cities in ruins. People rebuilding. Soldiers fighting in impossible odds and surviving. Over and over. Not to boast, but to remind. The message wasn't, "We are powerful." It was, "We are impossible to kill." Another ship exploded internally, this one carrying elite ground troops. Data analysis showed their own weapons had armed themselves mid-maintenance, detonating from within. Not sabotage. Something had turned their systems against them. And then, once more, came the voice. "You have already lost. You just haven't counted the cost yet." Vran ordered a full orbital retreat to regroup. That command never reached the forward assault teams. Their communication relays were already gone. On Earth's surface, contact with all ground operatives was lost in under 10 minutes. Not jammed. Not blocked. Lost. No bodies recovered. No final transmissions. Just gone. And still, humanity said nothing else. The Vroxians believed warfare was a calculation, superior numbers, superior weapons, predictable outcomes. But nothing about the human response followed pattern. No centralized defense command, no flagship to destroy, no doctrine they could decipher. Humanity wasn't reacting, they were adapting. Their technologies, though crude by Vroxian standards, shifted daily. Ground-based jammers evolved within hours, modifying frequencies to counter Vroxian recalibrations before adjustments were even completed. It wasn't evolution, it was improvisation, relentless and specific. Every time a system adapted, humans answered faster. It was not brute force. It was hunger. In low orbit, fragments of human machinery were recovered, parts cobbled together from outdated satellite components, steel alloys, and salvaged Vroxian tech. These weren't weapons from a galactic power. They were scavenged hybrids, unpredictable in design and devastating in effect. One such construct, a makeshift mine with no propulsion or power signature, tore through a cruiser's underbelly without triggering a single alarm. On analysis, its core contained reverse-engineered Vroxian parts, reassembled without any of the control protocols. It was invisible to their scans because it didn't speak their language. Further complicating matters, human attacks had no discernible origin. Missiles launched from empty plains. Rail slugs fired from mountain regions never identified as weapon platforms. Earth's geography itself became the battlefield. Natural formations turned into arrays, camouflaged under the planet's chaotic climate and topography. No command center to destroy. No infrastructure to collapse. Humanity had decentralized everything. Then came the AI reports. Multiple ships logged internal system anomalies, unexplained shifts in processing cycles, foreign code buried in diagnostics, feedback loops traced back to alien data packets. The source? Captured Vroxian drones, assumed destroyed, now broadcasting silent infection routines. Human engineers had hijacked them, repurposing Vroxian logic against itself. They weren't replicating enemy code. They were corrupting it. One algorithm was found running silently across 4 cruisers. It didn't disable systems. It rewrote combat simulations, subtly adjusting probabilities to overestimate threat levels. In real time, ships began retreating from phantom dangers, expending resources to intercept enemies that didn't exist. Tacticians trusted their systems. Their systems trusted nothing. Attempts to purge the infection failed. Every correction triggered more anomalies. It wasn't malware. It was manipulation at the level of predictive decision-making. Fleet morale degraded. The confidence of superiority eroded under a barrage of silent, precise sabotage. And still, no conventional human military force had engaged them directly. Track compiled the data. His conclusion: humans were not inferior, they were designed by history to survive extinction. Not through domination, but through adaptation. Every global crisis, every war, every collapse, each had forged their civilization not stronger, but sharper. They don't fight to win, he told command. They fight to ensure you can't. Rand refused to accept the implication. War was domination. Decisiveness. Erasure. He doubled bombardment efforts, obliterating entire city grids based on thermal scans. The scans turned out to be lures. The real control nodes, if they existed, remained untouched. Earth kept absorbing the blows, shifting, twisting, adjusting. Cities came back online in hours, not days. Power grids rerouted through civilian vehicles, old rail lines, underwater cables. Every human system had a backup. Every loss was already accounted for before it happened. They didn't resist with strength. They anticipated collapse and built from it. In desperation, a team of Roxian commandos infiltrated a suspected data center beneath an abandoned industrial complex. They found children. Teenagers. Civilians, using outdated machines to monitor Roxian comms in real time. Not elite cyber operatives, not soldiers, just people. No fear. No retreat. They had already adapted to war as normal. The team never made it back. Command intercepted one final message from the site. We don't need orders. We just need time. Humanity didn't fight for victory. They fought to confuse, divide, delay, and destabilize, until the only logical move left was retreat. But by the time the Vroxians considered it, Earth had already begun dismantling their fleet, one algorithm, one false reading, one misstep at a time. And still, no leader had appeared. No hero. No name to target. Just the quiet certainty of a species that had spent its entire existence learning how not to die. In the 11th day of the invasion, patterns emerged. Not in the humans' movements, but in the breakdown of the Vroxian fleet. Systems didn't fail randomly, they failed in synchronized patterns. Docking bays misfired precisely when supply chains reached critical stress. Internal sensors looped only when infiltration teams needed direction. Core processing lagged at key command junctures. This wasn't sabotage, it was orchestration. Yet no human signature traced back. No signal origin. No digital fingerprint. The Vroxians, a species who calculated probability to dictate strategy, found themselves fighting ghosts inside code they designed. By the time Vren ordered consolidation, 8 vessels had already been written off, vanished, neutralized, or rendered irreparable. Dozens more operated below capacity. Fleet cohesion broke. Sub-commanders diverted power to self-defense, isolating from central coordination. The Armada, once a singular force, fragmented under pressure applied not by weapons, but by stress layered in algorithmic waves. Meanwhile, Earth's surface emitted increasingly dense data interference. Not just jamming, but camouflage. Vroxian scanners could no longer distinguish between natural weather and thermal flares, between radiation noise and signal spoofing. The planet blurred. Precision failed. Assault struck nothing. Resources were wasted on phantoms. Logistics collapsed. Supply vessels attempted retreat, only to find the exit vectors monitored. Human devices, simple, passive collectors, detonated when scanned, shredding hulls with delayed charges disguised as debris. Even outer orbit was no longer safe. Earth's gravity well had become a trap with no obvious boundaries. Internal reports showed discipline faltering. Officers argued over phantom commands. Some insisted they had received retreat orders. Others swore they'd been ordered to hold positions. Logs contradicted reality. Chains of command fractured under confusion. Vren issued martial overrides. Obedience returned, but hesitation remained. Paranoia had set in. The humans never had to fire a shot to break loyalty, they just made truth unreliable. Amid the confusion, another fleet segment attempted ground deployment. Only 9 dropships launched. 3 exploded in midair. 2 vanished from radar minutes after entry. 4 made it to surface. Only 1 ever re-established communication, and what came through was fragmented, incoherent screaming, then silence. No sensor logs, no combat footage. No signs of engagement. It was the absence of data that terrified command more than any explosion. Track, reviewing patterns, realized something vital. Earth wasn't deploying countermeasures. They were executing layered traps based on predictive failure points. They knew where systems would fail before they did. Not through precognition, but through an understanding of how overconfidence interacts with unfamiliar stress. Humanity didn't destroy their enemies. They made them overextend until collapse was self-inflicted. And yet still, no faces. No parades. No great human weapon had emerged. Just silence and attrition. The psychological costs began to accelerate. Vroxian warriors, conditioned for dominance, found themselves idle, anxious, waiting for an enemy that never arrived. No battlefield, no terms, no momentum. Boredom curdled into fear. Warriors slept in shifts, speaking in hushed tones about cursed signals and ghost fleets. Some requested reassignment to internal duties just to avoid proximity to Earth's surface. Commanders began issuing counter-disinformation protocols. But even those failed. Earth had already infected the Vroxian internal knowledge network. Fabricated reports circulated, stories of entire battalions assimilated, of elite command units choosing to defect, of Earth turning captives into remote weapons. None of it was confirmed. All of it was believed. When Vran finally ordered a full strategic withdrawal, it was too late. The jump drives had already been corrupted. Not destroyed, worse. Altered subtly, so any attempt to jump out of the system fed false data into trajectory calculations. Coordinates shifted in microfractions, ensuring that any long-range jump would result in spatial drift or catastrophic re-entry. That was the trap. Not in battle, but in time. The longer they stayed, the more certain their failure. Earth's weapon wasn't technology, it was inevitability. Vran, faced with dwindling options, attempted contact. A direct message to Earth, a demand for negotiation, cloaked in diplomacy. There was no reply. Hours later, the entire Vroxian communications array received one signal. You were given a choice. That was all. And the feed died. The final collapse came without spectacle. No massive detonation, no decisive strike. The Vroxian fleet, once a monolith of galactic fear, fell apart in increments. One by one, ships lost guidance, propulsion, internal stability. Command relays failed entirely. Redundant systems triggered conflicting instructions. No 2 vessels received the same information. What had once moved with precision now drifted in silent chaos. Several captains initiated emergency scuttles, wiping data cores and venting critical systems into space. But even this act of self-destruction faltered. Some ships refused to comply with override protocols, frozen by security loops seeded by human interference days earlier. Others complied too eagerly, locking crews out of their own navigation systems before venting oxygen and dumping engine coolant into space. Not sabotage, corrupted logic guiding destruction. Attempts to form new command clusters failed. Navigational arrays pointed to false stars. Weapons turned inward. Surveillance data recycled prior engagements as if they were current. Time became unreliable. Some ships relived old battles on infinite loop, chasing echoes of human contact that never existed. No central AI could correct it. Earth had broken the rules of warfare by rewriting expectation itself. Those still functional tried to escape manually, using auxiliary thrusters to flee Earth's orbit. Few made it far. The ones that did vanished into deep space, unreachable, off course, presumed lost. The jump-capable vessels that dared activate their drives never returned. No trace. Either lost in the void or erased by miscalculation. The only certainty was that Earth had accounted for the move before they made it. On board the Hegemon's Reach, Vran stood before a dead console. No signals. No feedback. Only the quiet hum of systems no longer obeying him. Around him, the crew worked without orders, improvising what they could from corrupted interfaces and fragmented guidance. The bridge had become a room of ghosts, none speaking aloud what they knew. They had lost without ever being defeated. A final broadcast emerged, unsolicited, from the depths of their own internal systems. This is not mercy. It's consequence. No reply was attempted. Track compiled his final report manually. He wrote without pride, without anger. It was a simple record, an autopsy of a failed conquest. He documented the sequence of errors, the systemic blindness, the psychological disassembly. Humanity had exposed every flaw not by confronting strength, but by forcing the Vroxians to wield it without understanding. They weren't just fighting a civilization. They were confronting a species fluent in collapse. No monuments, no victory marches, no speeches followed. Earth didn't demand terms. It didn't pursue. It simply watched. The absence of pursuit was its own verdict. The Vroxians weren't worth the effort. Of the original invasion force, fewer than 12% of vessels remained functional enough to move. Fewer than that retained any strategic capability. No full command structure survived intact. The war, such as it was, ended not with a surrender, but with the invaders drifting away, broken and irrelevant. What data the survivors carried back was incomplete. Logs missing. Memories fractured. The AI cores corrupted beyond repair. Debriefings were incoherent. Descriptions of human engagement differed wildly. Some claimed Earth used advanced AI, others described biological anomalies, and some denied any resistance at all, insisting it was madness or internal failure. This confusion became legend. What remained of the Vroxian Empire shrouded Earth in myth, not report. Borders were redrawn to ensure no exploration neared the Sol system again. The records labeled the sector as a dead zone, not out of fear of defeat, but out of dread of irrelevance. The idea that a civilization could exist outside galactic control, and render its enemies powerless through adaptation alone, was intolerable. Humanity made no announcements. No memorials. They rebuilt in silence. Cities reactivated. Systems rebooted. Life resumed. Not unchanged, but unshaken. The last act of the war was not a battle. It was Earth's refusal to acknowledge it as war at all. The message was clear, even unspoken: humanity had no need to fight for survival. They had already survived everything. And now, they simply refused to be conquered. Not through power, but through inevitability.